Wednesday night. We hope you have a great time. I can't believe how many people. I think this is our biggest crowd, so thank you. So in the beginning of 1965, Frances's life was good. She was raising 4 children at home and had a great husband who provided for them. But later that year, he lost his job, and in those days, women didn't work. Parents raised their daughters to not have jobs. Frances was terrified that they would lose everything, and she decided to go to work. And at 37, with a grade 10 education, she became a realtor. And not only a realtor, she became one of the most successful realtors in Regina, and women began to contact her. And soon, Frances Olson Realty became an all-female real estate organization. Frances mentored those women, shared her work ethic, her fashion sense, and her knowledge of customer relations. She was a role model for women in the 60s who were just beginning to demand the same opportunities for themselves as their husbands had. Over the next 20 years, Frances would expand her knowledge, her business, and her life, and truly became one of the most prolific business people in Regina that Regina has ever seen. In her 20 years in real estate, Frances was honored with many awards, board appointments, and honorary degrees, leading up to Frances winning International Woman of the Year in 1983. International Woman of the Year. It didn't, and it didn't stop there. She continued to blaze a trail, winning some of Saskatchewan's most prestigious awards. I think Frances could call her life a fairy tale. As I have heard her say, it was magic what happened to me. So please welcome real estate tycoon, Frances Olson.
Thank you, ladies. I'm so honored to be here with you tonight. I haven't spoken for 30 years, so I spoke about 300 times during my business life, but I was born dyslexic for languages, and I couldn't speak English very well. So I had to go to the dark hall 3 times a week for elocution lessons to learn to use the tip of my tongue, my teeth, and my lips. So after I had my car accident when I was 57, I lost my voice again. I couldn't speak for 4 years. And I had to take elocution lessons every day for 2 years. So I started to talk like this. So you'll have to put up with me tonight because I'm not quite as good with my speech as I used to be. Now, when my husband lost his job, he worked for the government insurance office when Tommy Douglas first started. And he was there 18 years. And when the Liberal government got in, they went through all the government offices, and he came home and they said, go home. They gave him no pay. He had holidays he hadn't taken. We had no money because we lived from payday to payday with 4 children and 1 paycheck. So I was terrified. And he said to me, you know, you would be so good in real estate, because I was always buying and selling houses for us. And I had a photographic memory of every doorknob and color I ever saw. And he recognized he couldn't do that. So and I loved people, and I loved interior decorating. And he said, you would be so good. So no one would hire me. They were all local businessmen, and they wouldn't hire women. So he said to me, start your own company and hire women because they work harder than men. So I would be out at a party and I'd see you or you or you. And I would pick girls that had people smarts. And I'd say, come and work for me, I'll train you. And there were no real estate courses in those days, or I never would have got in. And, my mom and dad sent me after grade 10 because I couldn't learn French, Latin, English. They sent me to Success Business College. So I learned to take shorthand and type and do bookkeeping. I was there for a year. And that came in so handy when I went into business for myself because I could do everything. And there were some business real estate men started, and they had to have a big desk and a secretary. And so I was able to do all that myself. And plus clean my own office and put the money back into the company. And so sometimes when you think it's a terrible, terrible thing, I know I cried and cried when I had to quit school. But then the amazing thing was I became a public speaker. And should I tell you the first time I was speaking?
Yes. I don't know why. I'm just going to sit back and listen.
I got a letter from the University of Saskatoon, and they were having a businessman seminar, and I was the token female. And I said to Ralph, look at this letter. They want me to speak at a university. And he said, you'll do it. I said, I can't public speak. I'll probably die of fright. And he said, you're going to do it. So we had 2 months. And so we were speaking to commerce students who were going into business, like you girls are. And so he said, he talked about Oscar Abdullah putting a streetcar on the Scott Street Mall and selling hamburgers on the street, and how I started a company of my own. When I went up to Saskatoon, my daughter was 16 at the time, and she said, Mom, don't be scared. They're kids, just like us. So when I got up to Saskatoon, we could sit in on other speakers before we were speaking. And the president of the Toronto Stock Exchange was speaking, and I was looking down at him, and he was reading the most boring dissertation I've ever heard in my life. And the kids around me were listening to him. And I thought, you mean I agonized over this? When I get up there, you're probably well going to hear me. So I had to have lunch and speak after lunch. And so I was so terrified I could hardly eat lunch. So when I got up, I left Ralph's speech in the briefcase on the floor. My daughter's voice was in my ear. Mother, they're kids just like us, help them. So I looked at the kids and I started to help them. And then when I was finished, they started asking me questions for half an hour. And a girl grabbed me and said, Frances has to speak across campus. Well, I have to take her. So we were running across campus, and I was thinking, I didn't know I had to speak twice. And I was thinking, what did I say? What did I say? What did I say? So I did the same thing again. And that night at the banquet where they had all the businessmen and the professors and a lot of the commerce students, they introduced all the businessmen and gave them a beer stein engraved. And when they called Frances Olson, the whole room stood up. All the kids were whistling and cheering, and they made me an honorary professor. Now, is that something? So I learned my lesson. Don't ever read a speech. You know your audience, know what you're going to, how you're going to help them, and you know what you want to talk about. Just help them. So I never wrote. I always took time before I spoke, a quiet time, and visualized myself on the stage. And who was I helping? Were they young girls? Were they older business women? And I tried to help them at their stage of life. So that's my story, how I became an honorary professor.
So going back to real estate, do you remember your first cold call to Texaco?
Well, my husband said to me, Texaco are moving all their men to Calgary. Go up and get their listings. And in those days, Texaco would offer to buy their listings at a lesser rate, but if they could sell them, they would make more money, and the Texaco would pay the commission. So Ralph and I discussed this part of it, and he said, now, get in the car, I'm driving you down to 12th Avenue. There was a building behind the old McCallum Hill building where Texaco was. And he said, now get up there and get those listings. And I cried all the way downtown. I was terrified. I said, they're not going to talk to me. Are you crazy? And so I had to get out of the car. I fixed my tears with a compact. We had compacts then. And I ran up this flight of stairs to the second floor. And I walked in, and I'm so spacey. I look at the interior decorating, and I said, gee, this is a pretty office. A woman decorated this. I bet you did. And she said, I did. And I said, I haven't got an appointment with Mr. Jackson, but I have an idea for how to sell houses. Do you think he would see me? Go right in. So I told him my plan, and he gave me the list of names, and I ran downstairs, got in the car, and my husband said, how did you make out? I said, I got the list. He said, I don't know how you do it. I could never do that. But that taught me, I'm telling you today, lessons learned as I went around. That taught me, be nice to the Iron Duchess. It doesn't hurt.
It's a good lesson to learn. So you began to speak a lot of places, and I believe you spoke at Index 67.
No, Ralph said to me in 1967, I started in 65, and he said to me, they're having an international convention in Regina at the Hotel Sask called Index 67. You have to register. I said, are you out of your mind? I'll be the only woman there. He said, that's true, but you're a businesswoman now. You have a right to go. So I went. The first day I was there, I was speaking to a man from Miami. They took my, Leader Post took my picture with him and had me on the front page of the Leader Post. You can't buy that kind of advertising. And so it was about a 3-day convention. So the second day I was in the elevator going up to the convention floor, and there was a man there. I said, are you going to Index 67? He said, yes, I'm a reporter from the Canadian magazine in Toronto. I'm covering the convention. I said, are you having any fun? He said, no, I'm bored stiff. So I said, why don't you come home with me after and meet my husband and kids? He said, I would love to. So I took him home. And when you're a working mother and you've got 4 kids, you don't know what your house is going to look like. But the hospitality is so important. The other people don't care what your house is like, only you do. And so we barbecued and had a good time. And 3 weeks later, all these reporters came from Toronto to the house and took pictures all over the place. And he said, I'm doing a story on young entrepreneurs who started a company without help from their fathers. And he said, entrepreneurs 36 and younger. And I said, well, I'm too old, I'm 39 now. He said, you don't look it, I'm using you. So the Canadian magazine went to every household in Canada Saturday night. When that magazine came out, he interviewed other men. He gave them a quarter page and a little black and white color. He gave me a full page, sitting behind my desk like this, you know. And the real estate men were so upset. They phoned the Canadian magazine and gave them, you know what? They said, you made it look too easy for women to get into real estate. And so Canadian magazine phoned me and they were laughing. They said, you know what we said? Sorry if we hurt your feelings. Now, if that had been a real estate man, that never would have happened, would it? So what I had to go through, they were calling us. We had to sleep with clients to sell a house. I started out with gamble agencies, and Willie Francis had a real estate company, not a real estate insurance company. And so I gave him 49% of the shares in the real estate company. And I had about 5 girls. And we were the gamble girls. And so he came one day and said, Fran, I was out for lunch and I heard all these men talking about all you. And I can't afford to have you using my name. So he said, you have to leave and not use my name. So I said, but Willie, you know me, and Ralph worked at the office too with us. He was selling insurance with Willie by then. So I had to leave, and that taught me such a lesson. You can change your address, you can change your name, it doesn't matter. You're the only one who thinks everybody knows where I am. I can't change my address. You can. What keeps your business going is you. So don't be afraid to make change, because you're the only one that really knows anyway and cares. So I changed my name to Frances Olson because everyone used to ask me if I was Mrs. Gamble. And I thought, I'll use my own name. So we became the Olson girls. And I moved out to the Vagabond, which is now what's it called, the Travel Lodge, I think. It was the first motel in Regina, and it was very beautiful at the time. So a girlfriend of mine had moved out to Vancouver, and she said, you know, Fran, there was a real estate company right in the hotel where we stayed, and we bought from them. So I made a deal for them to give me one room behind the front desk, and then 2 rooms, and then 3 rooms. And I was always, as a young girl, because I had to walk down College Avenue to the Dark Hall 3 times a week for my voice lessons. I was always looking at the wonderful homes that were along College Avenue. They were just beautiful. And I would stop in front of this one big house and think, wouldn't it be marvelous to be so rich you could own a home like that? And then I'd go back home to the 23 block Olson. And one day I was in real estate in the Vagabond, and I got a phone call, and Mr. Chadwick, he was a manager of the Army and Navy store, and I used to work at the Army and Navy, and I loved it. I loved it so much better than typing, and because I was finding women dresses and shoes, and the Army and Navy used to be like winners. It would bring in expensive things, and it was so fun to work there. And so when I taught my sales ladies how to dress, they were able to dress beautifully from the Army and Navy. So Mr. Chadwick lived in this big house I used to stand in front of. And he phoned me when I was out at the Vagabond and said, I have to sell my house. And so I went down, and it was that house. So I bought it and made it an office. And that's where Roberta McKay is today. And the first month I moved in, 6 of my sales ladies at the Vagabond quit. I had 11 girls there, and said we're going to stay in the Vagabond and call it Vagabond Realty. And I was crying, and Ralph said, I said, 6 of my best girls left me. And Ralph said, Fran, 5 of your best girls stayed, right? So they had 150 listings. And if they were my company listings, but if they phoned their people to cancel, they would, and give them the listings. So I got on the phone, and I phoned 150 people. And I said, marvelous things are happening to me now. I bought this heritage house on College Avenue, and I'm having a big party. The mayor's coming, the premier's coming, all the important people in town are coming, and you're so important to us, you're coming too. And your new sales lady is going to be, and I gave them one of the names of the 5 girls left. And they went out and got a new listing signed. So the vagabond girls started with 0 business. So this is what you have to do when something happens. You fight and make it correct. And I had the biggest month I'd ever had in real estate. When I left Gamble and went to the Vagabond, I had the biggest month there. And when I went to College Avenue, I had the biggest month there I've ever had. Because you work at it to let people know where you are. And so these are all lessons that I learned as I went around.
I want to thank you for just allowing me to sit beside you and to have this conversation. I think you could have done it all yourself. You are a storyteller to the end. So everyone, just please thank Frances Olson, and yes.